AGS. But okay, okay. To everyone, please stand by. In a few minutes, we will start the webinar. Can I just state again our usual protocols? Okay. If you want to greet and say hi to everybody, use the chat. If you want to ask questions, use the Q&A. Okay, it's right down there. You will see chat, screen share, polling, record, raise hand, etc. So raise hand if you want to say something or put it in the chat. So it would be much easier and we can facilitate it further. We have around 500 registrants in this webinar this evening. And so far, we already have like about 60 signing in. So let's give it a few more minutes and then we will start off the webinar. To each and everyone, again, magandang gabi po sa inyo lahat. Thank you for joining this evening's webinar. This is our ninth already. You know, my goodness, it's about to end. And we've been enjoying this webinar every third Wednesday of the month. You know, and we've been always looking forward to this webinar of our very capable and fluent and rock star senior grand lecturer Teddy Calao. You know, just a while ago we had a picture. Kuya Teddy, who is the incumbent, had a picture with the incoming, and I asked if they can take a picture of the future, and which they oblige. So we're up to a good year ahead, and to each and everyone again, thank you. Those who are sending messages, we can see all your messages. Don't worry. Maraming salamat po. Magandang gabi rin sa inyo lahat. Okay? Lahat po ng nag-good evening, magandang gabi din po sa inyo lahat. As para sa La Union, my goodness. So, Guam. Okay? And Kuya JC, nandiyan ka pala. Thank you for joining us. And we also have from saan ba to? Benjamin Go, Masonic Lodge. Okay? We also have from R3 Tarlac. Okay? And okay, sandali. May nawawala po. Okay. To all of you, okay, from Nilad. Okay, thank you. Good evening. Anong nawawala mo, Kuya? Yung link. Oh, brethren, we'll just wait for our senior grand lecturer gets connected. Okay, there he is. You can see me at his back. Shouldn't we, CGM? 7:30, 7:15 siguro, 7:30. Are we on the... I'll check kung nandiyan na. We have brethren from La Trinidad Masonic Lodge number 344. Good evening. From Union Lodge number 70. Good evening. From Tarlac. Magandang gabi. Maya Pabengi. From Salinas 163. Okay. From Manticao 243. Okay. Malolos 46. Diego Silang 417. Okay. From Observance Lodge 686, Grand Lodge of Tennessee. Good evening. Good morning there, by the way. Okay, who else it? Indang Masonic Lodge 115, Saigon 188, Bagong Bayan number 4, Milad Lodge 12. Okay. So from we have June Cortez from South Atlantic Ocean. Okay. We have greetings from Japan. Okay, to all of you, good evening. Okay. Brethren, in like maybe about three minutes, we will start the webinar. We'll just call on the Grandmaster to set up and join us in this webinar. Okay.
Congratulations for the brethren, to the brethren of Pinaglabanan. That's your seal behind me. As Kuya Dennis is very wishful Dennis is highlighted. We're here at the Capital Masonic Center, newly refurbished. We wish we could show it to you. Behind me is the office of Batasan Lagi. We're just waiting for Most Worshipful June, who was with us at the program today. Congratulations to Very Worshipful Alan and Very Worshipful Beda, our District Deputy Grandmasters here. Shout out to the brethren of NCRE and NCRF for this beautiful refurbished temple here at Capitol Masonic's temple. Great day to be in our joint districts here today. My mother lodge is here. Theodoro M. Kala 136. We're so happy to be here with you.
Okay, brethren, we're reaching about 100 participants already this evening. My goodness. We never expect this much people to be joining us. Marami palang chismoso sa atin. We'll be talking about fake news in Masonry, my goodness. And I think this is a very good topic for us to discuss tonight. Okay? So to start off our program this evening, we are fortunate to have with us, of course, every night, every webinar night, no less than our most worshipful Grandmaster. They are setting up right now in the other room. Okay, yan po. Alam niyo po, kaya kami ganito lahat itsura namin. Live po to. Ibig sabihin live. Magkakasama po kami ngayon sa Capitol Masonic Temple. Dahil pinakita po innovations na ginawa. So, without much further ado, brethren, this evening, we're fortunate to have again with us our infatigable and very passionate and committed Grandmaster who never thinks of time and elements of any other consideration but service to the craft. So, allow me to call on for his message our most worshipful Grandmaster of the Most Worshipful Grand Lodge of Free and Accepted Masons of the Philippines, Most Worshipful Agapito S. Suwan Jr. Sir?
Thank you very much, Very Worshipful Dennis. Very Worshipful Oliver Yapot, our Assistant Grand Secretary. Very Worshipful Teddy Calao, our Senior Grand Lecturer. Very Worshipful Dennis Konanan, our Chief of Staff. Very Worshipful Sirs, Brethren, good evening. Welcome again to our series of Masonic webinars called Third Wednesdays in the West, facilitated by our Senior Grand Lecturer, Very Worshipful Teodoro Kala IV. Tonight will be on the topic of Masonic history, one of the most important disciplines of study in the life of a Freemason, especially of Filipino Freemasons, as local Masonic history is closely intertwined with the history of the Philippines itself. The study of Masonic history, however, is beset with its own challenges. In this age of social media becoming the predominant platform for communication, fake news has also proliferated more widely than ever before. We are at a point where the common man no longer knows which are true and which are not. Addressing false allegations about Masonry, therefore, poses a challenge that can only be overcome by a careful and systematic approach in presenting reliable and verifiable facts and dispelling misconceptions. Very Worshipful Teddy Calao, with his vast experience in the field of both Masonic history and Masonic research, is certainly more than qualified to give us pointers on how this could be done. But before we begin, allow me to first share with you important news and announcements from our Grand Lodge in order to dispel possible fake news which may be circulating in the grapevine. Yes, it is true that the annual communication will already push through this coming April, but with safety protocols already set in place. We will be allowing virtual participation through remote viewing and remote voting of ANCOM delegates who are either senior citizens, those with comorbidity issues, those with travel constraints, or those with other restrictions. There will be a one-day plenary session on Thursday, April 22, in the designated convention site of the SMX Center, Olongapo City. Government-mandated minimum health standards shall be strictly implemented. For instance, all attendees must undergo swab test or saliva test prior to entry. A health certificate attesting to a negative COVID-19 infection and dated 5 days prior to ANCOM, or a vaccination certificate, as the case may be, is accepted as alternative to the swab test. The plenary will be open following traditional Masonic protocols and will discharge businesses such as the election of officers. On matters of voting for the approval or disapproval of matters requiring ANCOM decision and ratification, those physically present shall vote in the traditional manner, while those present virtually shall vote online using the Zoom polling system. Digital ANCOM kits will be made available for download from the GLP website. All ceremonials, including the installation of elected and appointed officers, shall be held the following day, on Friday, April 23, after which the Grand Lodge shall close the annual communication. As Grand Master, I have issued Edict number 340, the modified procedures for ANCOM 2021, for your further detailed instructions. As soon as all ANCOM delegates have registered their email addresses, the Grand Lodge shall schedule a mock election supervised by the ELECOM for the purpose of testing the system and identifying possible technical issues to be resolved prior to ANCOM. Let me reiterate again and again my constant reminder to everyone to please be extra careful, even more so now that our Masonic labors have already been resumed. We need to resume. Masonry does not and will not stop, but we must do so ever so carefully and vigilantly, making sure our safety is our foremost concern. We must be careful, not just for ourselves and our brethren, but most especially for our families and loved ones, to whom we return home at the end of each day. Let us make sure we are always safe, clean, and free of COVID-19. I especially commend those lodges who have started their face-to-face stated meetings with maximum protection and safety measures in place. Again, I would like to thank Venerable Teddy Calao for maintaining the Masonic spirit of those at home learning from his lectures online. These monthly webinars gave all of us a chance to still learn and practice Masonry even from the safety of our homes. I would also like to thank the Cable Tow team for webcasting our online Masonic webinars to a wider audience across the internet. Both Venerable Calao and the Cable Tow are hard at work in making sure no fake news about Masonry remains unaddressed. They are the guardians of our true and authentic Masonic history, and it is only proper that tonight's webinar is orchestrated by their combined efforts and talents. Thank you, brethren. Thank you, everyone. And I hope you enjoy and learn from this month's webinar. Good evening.
Thank you very much, most worshipful Grandmaster. Again, this evening's announcement and message will again be a trending topic. I assume in the next couple of days in our jurisdiction. So thank you very much, sir, for your commitment and unwavering passion to our craft. We look forward to the annual communication happening soon, and rest assured, you have all of us here, supporting you and making sure that everything will be well. So now, without much further ado, he's already up in the air. Let me call on our rockstar senior grand lecturer, Very Worshipful Teodoro Teddy Calao de Fort, for our lecture on When Fake News Mask Masonic History, addressing the sources of false allegations about the craft. Okay, Teddy, go ahead.
Thank you, Kuya Dennis. For those of you who he's right there behind me. Thank you everyone for attending, and thank you, most worshipful sir, for your message today. We're always happy that you can join us, even if wherever you are, including when you're in the next room. For those of you who just tuned in, we're all together here today celebrating the refurbishment, the renovation of Capitol Masonic Center here in Quezon City. Congratulations again to Very Worshipful Alan and Very Worshipful Beda for this incredibly renovated center. It's happy to be here, and happy to that the brethren of NCRE and NCRF have a home that they've always been proud of, and have more reasons to be proud of now. Brethren, today we have a potentially, possibly one of the most controversial topics in this series, because we are going to talk about, I don't know if Kuya Dennis is highlighted, the topic of chismis. And chismis in the sense that we have always, through the decades as a craft, always had to deal with clearly false perceptions of who we are and what we do as the world's most ancient philosophy, most ancient organization of men promoting a philosophy of mentorship. So tonight we're going to take a deep look at what chismis is when it comes to how it affects that. We will be dealing essentially with I'm just waiting for the slide. Can you see the slide? Okay. For that, we will be looking essentially at four objectives today. First, we're going to look at truth in Freemasonry. Before we talk about fake news, let's talk about what is true to Freemasons. In particularly, why we call this one of our three principal tenets. There are others being brotherly love and relief. We have talked about the two other principal tenets in previous episodes of this webinar. So today, now that we're going to talk about fake news, I think it's important to highlight what we truly mean when we say that we hold truth to be a core tenet or foundational principle of our organization. Because from there, we can see why in recent years, particularly Grand Lodges like the United Grand Lodge of England, there has been a growing trend towards going away from the traditional fake news, and instead actively addressing and emphasizing that it is not what is our these fake information or false perceptions are not what our fraternity is about, which is a good thing, as you'll see later from an actual example. So this will be a webinar that will be filled with stories, because we have a lot of examples in each of these four topics. Our second topic, now that we know that there's a trend, not just here in the Philippines, but most especially in other regular Grand Lodges abroad, to addressing these fake news, we can go into history and look at our own history and see where we can find three major forces influencing errors in the craft when this is depicted in Philippine historical works. So this way we can highlight what it was very specifically how inaccuracies crop up when we talk about Freemasonry. It can be a simple misperception of a term because of the Masonic principle of tolerance. When we talk about God, we try to talk about the divine providence in a very neutral term. So we often use great architect of the universe and other terms. For those who are non-Masons, they end up, when they overhear it, they think that that's a separate God that we're promoting when we're actually giving a neutral term to highlight that we come from very different beliefs. When you bring that acronym together, GAO2, a lot of people think we're referring to a goat. That's why you have that very well-known fake news that we somehow have a goat somewhere in our ceremonies. No Mason is afraid of any goat because there are no goats in any of our rituals. But now you can see why that crops up. So we will be going into three examples for each of these major sources that end up falsely providing a misrepresentation of the craft, particularly for historians who are not Masons. And then after that, we can go into more current look at your sources. We can easily identify the four major sources of why we have false perceptions of the craft. For that, we will look at what you call a heat map, where we can see why these four sources have motivations or reasons to have wrong perceptions or promote deliberately false narratives about who we are as Masons. Having identified those four major sources of fake news, we can go about arming ourselves with a framework for addressing each of these instances of fake news up, depending who is the source of that fake news. And finally, of course, before we end, I'd like to give three very specific examples of how we can use all of this, what we've learned in our three previous topics, in terms of better highlighting Masonic truth through three specific case studies. Conceptually, when a non-Mason talks to us about the distinction between our philosophy and any religion, one. Pragmatically, when we do Masonic research or do Masonic writing, we will look at how truth is seen from the perspectives of each of the four major Masonic schools of thought. And finally, we will look at historically a specific instance where clearly the fraternity was slandered, and because we have the historical evidence today, we can really show why this previous narrative was all along founded on a wrong notion of what the fraternity is. And many Masons who are more senior know this. It's not that important anymore because it's many feel that it is really irrelevant, and it is irrelevant to our history. But for the middle half of last century, it was a major controversy. And I refer specifically to the alleged retraction of Rizal from his membership in the fraternity just before he died. Take note, retraction from his membership in the fraternity just before he died. I want to highlight that because that is the key to that controversy being resolved. Okay? So, our topic for fake news, by that, when we talk about that, we talk essentially of four major topics. Okay, we have to know first, what do you mean if you're going to talk about fake news, fake perceptions, fake stories, fake narratives about us? First, you have to know, how do we define truth? Okay, so we will go into that. They're going to go into, okay, major forces that end up creating fake stories or false narratives in history. And more currently, we'll look at the sources for fake news and how to address those four major sources. And I'd like to end with what I said with those three caselets. Before I go, I want to highlight, if you want to know more about this from a foreign perspective, you can look no further than the United States. This is a great book to show you how much hoaxes there are about Freemasonry, some of which haven't even reached here. Okay, but some of which in the US, they have to deal with, not just fake goats going around. Okay, that book is It True About What They Say About Freemasonry by De Hoyos and Morris. It's a great book to get you started, to realize that this trend of fake news is not fake. We have had to deal with this every regular Grand Lodge, from regardless of what country you're in. Okay, but first, let's talk about Masonic truth. Okay, so when we talk about Masonic truth, we talk about the ideal of truth in Masonic philosophy. Okay, what do you actually mean when you say that as our principal tenets, and this is introduced when you are initiated in the first degree? I'm very happy that our incoming Grand Masters wants to highlight the Entered Apprentice degree. It's it's important that we should note that our first and second degree, the second degree, by the way, is my favorite. Our first and second degree are just as important as our third degree. Many Freemasons, because they truly enjoyed how exciting the third degree is, want to rush you through it. When our principal tenets are first explained in the initiation during the first degree. And one of them is, in addition to brotherly love and relief, is truth. What do you really mean by truth in the context of the fact that we have a philosophy of practical ethics? That essentially means learning to go on the right path. One, and opposite, the paths you should not choose. You should not choose the paths you should not go. And brethren, there are actually four wrong paths. We know they are four wrong paths because they are the opposite of the virtues we teach also in the first degree. The virtues of temperance, fortitude, prudence, and justice. They are taught, they are lectured in the first degree. And when you look at those four virtues, they all have opposite evils. It is very easy to go down one of those four roads, and we will see some of which, when I talk about it, you will easily recognize as something that is prevalent not just in Freemasonry, but also other fraternities like college fraternity, especially college fraternities, and other fraternities that that have other purposes. Okay, we need to talk about this concept of truth because that is the reason why there is a growing trend now. Not just here, we've always been upfront in addressing this, but particularly in our sister jurisdictions like the United Grand Lodge of England, like in the United States. As you've seen the book that I earlier highlighted, which are moving beyond the traditional attitude of, if it's fake news, just ignore it, it'll go away. We know in this internet age that doesn't happen. And if fake news is continuously repeated, people will think it's true. And therefore, we must address it. Okay, so from silence, we must move towards an attitude of assertion. And I'm actually going to give a case study of how that's done right now in the United Grand Lodge of Finland. But first, the ideal of truth. As you know, we've in previous episodes, we've talked about brotherly love, okay, in terms of mentorship and respect, and relief, which means empathy and perspective for the other. When we last talked about Masonic liturgy, we talked about truth from the perspective of the fact that it really involves, in traditional English, rational contemplation for the common good. Yung ibig sabihin niyan for brethren here in the Philippines, really, basically is, what can I do beyond my own self-interest? How can I contribute to the greater good of everyone, rather than just focusing on myself? And that entails contemplation, rational thought, because it's in contemplation, in a rational manner, with your faith as foundation, that you become a better man. That point of our philosophy. And we are reminded by that in every stated and special meeting. Before we close, for those of you who are not Masons, you might wonder why this is so. There is a portion in our closing ceremonies when we are reminded of this. And those who are Masons know this. When they hear the words that Masons always meet on the level, they always add the plumb and part upon the stool. Those are our leaders before we end every stated or special meeting. And there's a reason for that. Because that is the way, the right way for us to practice finding the truth. Being imperfect, not being God, it's impossible for us to get the fully grasp the ideal of what truth is, because we will always have a subjective perspective. But we get closer to it, okay, by following those reminders to always meet on the level, act by the plumb, and part on the square. You will note that the newest brethren, when they join, okay, this is not a secret. This is something that is that can be discussed openly. The newest brethren are always, they always sit, these newest members, after their initiation, in the northeast corner. This is not a secret because when cornerstones are laid in operative guilds, whether it's a simple building or the United States Capitol, where the cornerstone was laid by Most Worshipful George Washington, the cornerstone, that first block, is put on the northeast corner. And that is the traditional notion of why we put the newest brethren in that corner of the lodge. There is a practical reason, however. Unlike if they were seated in the south, okay, or unlike if they were seated far from the worshipful master in the northwest, the northeast corner is the perfect viewpoint for them to see all three officers wearing their jewels. What else? Meet on the level, act by the plumb, part on the square. Okay? Those three jewels are what our officers wear. And there's a reason why they're wearing them. Because they encapsulate completely the philosophy of ethics that we strive to practice. More on that later. Okay? That's the path to truth. We'll get to that. Just as important, okay, especially if you're in management, when you talk about strategy is finding out what you want to do and doing it so that, your competitors, you will be ahead of your competitors. That's competitive strategy. Just as important, if you study strategy, is deciding what not to do. Okay, just as important, okay, in follow the right path, is knowing the paths should not take. And we are taught impliedly what those wrong paths are when we are taught the 4 cardinal virtues of the fraternity in the first degree. What are those 4 cardinal virtues? temperance, fortitude, prudence, and justice. They all have opposite evils. For temperance, there is tribalism. For fortitude, there is relativism. For prudence versus scientism. For justice, there is legalism. Brethren, alam ko mukhang these are traditional English words. We will get to what those means in practice. But first, let me highlight. This is implied in the lecture. You should know that just as much as itong virtues na to, the virtues that we talk about, okay, you should practice them. You should avoid the exact opposites of these. And those are the four that we will talk about after first we get to know path towards the ideal of Masonic truth. It's the right path. There it is, brethren. Okay? That right path is completely our complete set of of what we practice philosophically. The three jewels worn by our most senior officers, namely the square worn by the worshipful master, the level worn by the senior warden, and the plumb, okay, worn by the junior warden. The newest brethren are purposely, practically also seated in the northeast corner because this is a mnemonic to remind them of why we wear those jewels. The square, remember the phrase, remember the last reminder. Meet on the level, act by the plumb, part upon the square. That's because they each symbolize a specific component of our complete system of ethics. Let's start with the worshipful master. He wears a square. The square, you go to it, you go to a ritual. The square in our ritual is a symbol of virtue and moral excellence. The worshipful master must, by the time finish being must have the wisdom to lead the craft. That's why he has the square. Okay. The level, on the other hand, is worn by the senior warden in the West. The senior warden in all guilds supervises the craft. He is the embodiment of competence. He is the embodiment of this is the work we must do. This is the work we must do well. So that the worshipful master can look at the big picture. He looks at the everyday detail. And has been a symbol of equity and equity. Okay. Which is basically looking at everything that we do, we must do it right. Okay, correctly, measured properly. Okay, and that contrasts with the most junior of the senior officers, the junior warden, who traditionally is the one elected by the brethren to move up to senior warden and master. There's a reason why brethren put him first as junior warden rather than senior warden or worshipful master. Symbolically, it highlights that while you might perhaps be the most popular brother, okay, that's hence your election, you still have to prepare yourself to truly excel wisdom knowledge. To make you junior warden. And therefore, as junior warden, unlike the senior warden or the worship master, the junior warden traditionally coaches and addresses the welfare of brethren. This is not something I made up, brethren. You can see this by the fact that unlike the worshipful master, whose assistant is the senior deacon, and the senior warden, whose assistant is the junior deacon, you know their traditional roles. The two assistants in front of the junior warden are the senior and junior stewards. There's a reason why they are there. You know their traditional role, right? They are supervise the fellowship after. The two stewards are there to highlight. It highlights the role of the junior warden, the traditional role of the junior warden. His is not to supervise the craft. Remember, his pillar is up. Okay, for non-Masons, there are two pillars in that that are on the desk of the senior and junior wardens. When there is a meeting, the senior warden's pillar is up because the senior warden is supervising the craft. When we are in recess or at a break, it is the junior warden's pillar that is up. That symbolizes that we are in fellowship. Okay, that we are not working. And that is the domain of the junior warden because that is his traditional role. He must be, it is a role that highlights empathy. And like the plum, okay, upright behavior. Upright behavior in the sense that you want to look at really more, not the specific values that you're promoting or how you measure progress, but how are brethren okay? Okay, are they are they behaving appropriately for their station in life? For the fact that they are Masons. That is the role of the junior warden, and that is why the plum, which symbolizes upright behavior, is his jewel. So, brethren, there's no reason to confuse any of these jewels if you know what they're for. When the new brother looks at the square, he is meant to ask, what is truly good? What that means is, what are your values? That's the foundation. Okay, that's the foundation of everything that you deem important in life. And for that, you need wisdom. You need a process of contemplation to arrive at what you truly value. Hence, the square, as seen in the Worshipful Master. What is truly good to you? If you've defined that, you then look at the south. I'm sorry, you look at the west, the senior warden, to determine now, knowing those values, what is truly right. What are the parameters or rules that you will recognize so that brethren knows that you can uniformly do what's right for specific situations. You have uniform guidelines to define and measure whatever context you have in life, your conduct as well as your progress. So that's the level which asks you the question, not what is truly good, but knowing what is truly good, okay, what is the right way to go about it? What are the principles you hold which makes you, which allows you to progress uniformly, correctly, and in a way that brethren can see that you are you believe in the rule of law. Of course, it doesn't end there, right? Many people think that ethics is just about values and principles, correct values and correct rules. We teach in Freemasonry that not only is ethics about values and principles, it is also about intent. That's where the junior warden comes in with this jewel. Okay, act by the plum, act uprightly. It's not enough that you have values. They're the most important, of course. It's not enough that you have principles, that you're a principled man. It's also important that your intent is correct. The purpose of you doing something, do it, that is the to do. Okay, purpose will guide you in the course of action that you decide, the course of action that you don't, as well as the course of action that you don't decide to do, both your choice and non-choice. Together, these three, not just values, not just principles, but also purpose, These form a complete system of practical ethics as founded on your faith. And that, in a nutshell, brethren, I did not invent this. This is in a ritual. That, in a nutshell, is what we mean by rational contemplation towards the common good. This is the right path towards the ideal of Masonic truth. We will falter, as I've highlighted previously in our earlier episodes. We will always falter. But at the end of our life, our peers, our brethren, will be the one to judge us here. Okay, we will be judged by our God, the God that of our faith. When we move to to that His domain. But here, when we pass on, our brethren will judge us, not whether we are members of the fraternity, but whether we are true Freemasons on these parameters, whether we meet on the level, okay, act by the plumb, and part on the square. We have the rules. Rules are applied with appropriate intent based on uniform values that we always practice, whether we are in the lodge or outside. And that, in a nutshell, is truth. Let's go to the other side of the. We're also taught, brethren, in the first degree, our temperance, fortitude, prudence, and justice. Temperance means, of course, moderation in feed and deed. Fortitude means personal resilience, being tough, okay, as we address the challenges of life. Prudence means diligence and discretion. Justice means equity and stewardship, okay, being responsible and okay, always trying to be have an equitable, living an equitable life. Our philosophy practical ethics highlights that, implies that if we believe in these virtues, we must also reject their opposite evils. The opposite evil of temperance is tribalism. See if you recognize this. Tribalism is believing that your fraternity is right, your brother right or wrong. Do you know that? You know that? Do you recognize that? That's what some college fraternities actually put in their, own set of principles. My brother, right or wrong. That's not something we practice in Freemasonry. Okay, because if you believe in temperance, okay, you should know that there is, okay, that you cannot go to the extent of always siding with your brother if, in particular, he does an evil act. The correcting principle here is that you must understand the limits of one's cable tow. Tribalism has no place in a fraternity that believes in temperance. Let's go to fortitude. Here is something that some religions accuse us of, and that is that we don't have any actual beliefs because all of us, we're all Christians, we're all Jews, we're all Muslims, we're all together. We don't have a God because we're all together. Not understanding our principle of tolerance. Okay? Relativism, that is relativism. They accuse us of relativism, which is excusing bad or unjust behavior given the perspective that moral norms are supposedly the same. That is the very opposite of fortitude. That's basically saying, okay lang, everybody happy lang tayo. That is the opposite of fortitude because fortitude is striving to and persevering in consciously doing what's right. Again, if you're a fraternity that believes in fortitude, there is no place for relativism, and therefore, this fake news of some religions accusing us of relativism is wrong. Many Masons died heroic deaths because of this principle, fortitude. Let's go to prudence. Okay, we highlight that truth is rational contemplation towards the common good. That can go to extreme. The extreme of prudence is you'll go beyond diligence and discretion, and you you do everything without emotion. Okay, you overly focus on the fact that everything must be rational. You're a human version of Spock of Star Trek. That is the fact that our code of ethics is rational. It's taken to the extreme. That is why we always highlight when you enter a Masonic a lodge room and you see the above the worshipful master, there's that the triangle with the letter G, which means God. It highlights to us that scientism is a because it is the evidence. It must always be the foundation for your moral compass. Okay. Finally, of course, there's justice. And the opposite of justice is pure legalism, which is what happens, unfortunately, being a lawyer, in the way when we have law schools who all they do is train certain law students just to pass the bar, just to know the rules. Not recognizing that moral norms often go beyond the minimum requirements set by law. If you're a lawyer, it is essential that you see our system of justice not as rules-based, but as principles-based. There are principles behind every rules. And sometimes, the principles are more important than the rules. If you focus, however, only on the rules, you will end up just focusing on loopholes. As long as it's not subject to the rules, puede. It's okay. That's not what Freemasonry is about. Real justice is understanding the principle or rationale for every rule before applying such. You can see, brethren, that particularly for those who are members of the fraternity, you can see how other fraternity evils. If you truly believe in our Masonic cardinal virtues, you must be prepared to reject these four opposite evils. Okay? Why do we spend so much time on the Masonic concept of truth? Because it's the basis why in many of our sister jurisdictions now, there is a strong focus to move beyond the trend of just being silent. Because if you keep repeating a lie, people are getting to realize that some people will think that that lie is true. In the United Grand Lodge of England, since 2018, they have enacted this campaign of Enough is Enough, wherein they will actively address every lie that's out there. I warn you, brethren, this is a example of them doing this. The other side here, both the interviewer and the female, they can see prejudice. I just want to highlight that you shouldn't really be focused on them. You can watch this again and see, how much you can start in the segment. You can do that. I want to highlight is see how the Freemason here acts. The Freemason here is the current Chief Executive Officer of the United Grand Lodge of England. He's the Assistant Grand Secretary. He's a medical doctor, Dr. David Staples. See how he addresses the prejudices thrown against him, not just by the journalist, but also the interviewer here.
Dr. David, does that mean that women can now... The United Grand Lodge of England, or Freemasons, are calling for an end to what they say is discrimination against its members. In an ad featured in a number of newspapers, they say they welcome individuals from all walks of life, race and religion.
That's okay.
Not women. And that the stigmatisation they feel is undeserved. Joining me to discuss this is columnist for The Guardian, Dawn Foster, the chief executive of Freemasons, who coined this ad, Dr. David Staples. Dr. David, does that mean that women can now join?
Women have been able to join for 100 years or so. We've just celebrated the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage. Two of the key leaders in the suffrage movement were indeed female Freemasons. So one of the reasons that the United Grand Lodge of England has sort of stepped out to say, why don't you talk to us about who we are and what we do, is to try and bust some of these myths that have been perpetrated for far too long. There are two women's Grand Lodges in England. One of them celebrated their 100th anniversary in our Grand Temple. If you are a woman, you can be a Freemason.
There you go, Dawn. If you're a woman, you can be a Freemason.
As David said, there are a very small number of women. I think the issue here is over and over again, as you know, every paper has said, not that Freemasons exist, but that the membership is predominantly secret. So people don't know who is a member. We don't know how many, what positions in public life they hold. And there's this huge, huge concern, and it's gone back for years, that people who are Masons, secret in this secret organisation, are giving each other unfair advantage and, rigging the system from behind. Most people don't, myself included, don't have problems with Masons existing if they were honest about the fact that they are Masons in public life.
You're secret and you are not honest, sir.
Well, I've been a doctor for 22 years. I've been a consultant for 10 years. I used to be clinical director at Peterborough Hospital for Medicine. I have never kept my membership secret. I used to wear scrubs every day to work, except when I was going to a Masonic meeting when I'd be in a suit. And people would ask me, why are you in a suit? And it's because I'm going to the Freemasons. And equally, a huge number of my 200,000 members do exactly the same. But, I look back over the last 20 years or so, everybody that I've met who's kept their membership a secret is not because that they're involved in any nefarious activities, that they're doing anything behind the scenes that they shouldn't be. It's because they are
pointed out there have been issues in the past of
what happens if their membership becomes known. And it's becoming clearer and clearer and clearer that actually the popular perception is quite... But, I look back over the last 20 years or so, everybody that I've met who's kept their membership a secret is not because that they're involved in any nefarious activities, that they're doing anything behind the scenes that they shouldn't be. It's because they are actually genuinely afraid of what happens if their membership becomes known. And it's becoming clearer and clearer and clearer that actually the popular perception is quite the opposite of what's really going on.
So the only reason they stay secret, Dawn, is because they're fearful that if they say they're a Mason, they will be victimised.
I mean, it seems like a catch-22 situation. I'm not really sure I understand David's point. The issue people have with Masons is the fact that they predominantly keep their membership secret. And the Home Affairs Select Committee and lots of other people have raised a lot of alarm bells about the fact that due to the secretive nature, for instance, a lot of police officers, a lot of people in the judiciary, and now we found out from this Guardian investigation, a lot of people in Parliament are secret members. And the Home Affairs Select Committee have pointed out there have been issues in the past of Freemasons being corrupt. There was some involvement with Freemasons in the Birmingham Six, etc. And it's very, very difficult to rule out whether or not Freemasons are doing anything untoward, anything corrupt, anything involved in backhanders, if they won't be honest about the fact they are Freemasons when they are in public life.
Okay.
If police officers announced it, then most people would have no problem.
Okay, I saw you bristle then, Doctor.
Well, I have a great deal of respect for the Guardian newspaper. It's a first-class newspaper. It's won all sorts of awards for its investigative journalism.
Here comes the but, Dawn.
Here's the but. But the piece they did on Monday was absolutely wrong. It talks about secret lodges meeting in Westminster, stuffed full of MPs and stuffed full of political journalists. Well, those secret lodges have had Wikipedia pages for 12 years. They've had histories published, which actually talks a lot about who their membership are. One of them was even reported in the Telegraph when it was consecrated. elected. They don't meet in Westminster, they meet in Camden. And secondly, finally, there's no MPs in the lodge that The Guardian said was full of MPs, and there are no journalists in the lodge that was full of journalists. So I think, when people get it wrong, are they going to apologise to my 200,000 members?
Dawn, are you going to apologise to his 200,000 members?
I'm not, because that is incorrect. We
Just
spoke
leave
to
that there,
number
Dawn,
of
for a
people.
second. You're wrong, Doctor.
Well, the trouble is about Freemasonry is that if you want a medical opinion, you go and ask a doctor. If you want to know how to build a building, you go and ask an architect. But if you want to know about Freemasonry, you ask absolutely anybody but a Freemason. So what we're saying is enough is enough.
Dawn,
Come and talk to us. Find out who we are.
Dawn is
Find out
saying
what
that
we
you
do.
are wrong. So tell us why she is wrong.
I'm absolutely not wrong, because
Okay.
I know who the members are.
Okay, he knows who the members are, Dawn.
Well, why doesn't he tell us in that case?
Okay,
We
great
spoke- we
question.
spoke
Hold
to
on,
his-
Dawn. Why don't you tell us, Doctor?
Well, because we allow people to have the choice to make their membership public. Or
So how
not.
do we know then?
And that
How
has-
do we
well,
know if
and
you
that-
won't tell
well,
us?
Let's just give the justification for that. The European Court
No,
of Human
no,
Rights
answer
on
Dawn's
two separate
question.
occasions has said that it is illegal to force people to disclose their membership.
Okay, Dawn, we just have to accept his word for it.
Well, this is exactly the problem. If we knew who, we know that there are 4 MPs, they've spoken to us. We know there are senior Fleet Street journalists, they've spoken to us, but we don't know the full membership, and this is why people have an issue.
Dawn, why don't you come into Freemasons Hall? I will show you our database on the computer. I will show you the occupations of the people who are members of those lodges. I'm not going to tell you who they are, but if you want to come and see the occupation off our computer, you're more than welcome to do that. I have nothing to hide on this, and I know that I'm right.
But you're hiding their names.
That's right, because we do not force people
So
to
you do
disclose
have
their
something to
membership.
hide.
Well, let me give you a personal story. I was chairman of a charity for 10 years in the East End of London. We did good things. We got minimum wage for immigrant workers who cleaned Canary Wharf. I became CEO of the Freemasons in September, and as soon as I found out I got that job, somebody came up to me and said, "I'm terribly sorry, but you can't be chairman of this charity anymore. You can't be chairman of this charity because we work with the Catholic Church, we work with the evangelical wing of the Church of England, and I'm afraid they just don't like Freemasons. And that is prejudice, and this needs to stop."
Dawn.
Okay, go ahead.
No, don't go.
I mean, the thing is, people are worried about Freemasons because there is a historical precedent for corruption and for cover-ups. For instance, you look at the Birmingham 6, you look at the West Midlands Serious Crime Unit. There are lots and lots of instances where Freemasonry has been involved in corruption, and people are very worried about this. If you genuinely have nothing to hide, people should be open about it. And if you know people are Freemasons, there's nothing to hide. People aren't suspicious. Comparing this to, gender discrimination, racial discrimination is just foolish. You choose to be a Freemason.
No, I'm afraid it's not foolish. I've got personal friends who are lawyers. Because of the misreporting for the last 20 years or so, they will not disclose that they're Freemasons because they're afraid of being connected with the corruption nonsense that's going around. We are a group who do a huge amount in the communities. We raised £33 million for charity last year. I can tell you all about our ceremonies and what they mean and what we do if we had time. But don't take it from me. Go and talk to the people up and down the country who are Freemasons. Visit our lodges, visit our headquarters in Covent Garden, which is open every single day. We do tours, we've got a library, we've got a museum. Let's put an end to these rumours that we're a secret society and all these things which have just been reported for 20 years.
You do not share names. Earlier on the BBC when we were talking, you wouldn't even show us the handshake.
Well, it's a gimmick. I don't want to talk about gimmicks. I want to talk about the fact that that people lose jobs and are feared.
Show us the handshake.
No, I'm not going to show you the handshake.
Why
And here's
not?
it's a token of recognition used in our ceremonies in the lodge. We're forbidden from doing it outside the lodge. And bluntly, it's just not something that I'm going to show on national
Why are you
television.
forgiven? Why are you
I've
forbidden?
explained the reasons why this morning.
Why are you forbidden?
I'm sorry, I missed that
Why
question.
are you forbidden
Why am
from
I
showing us
forbidden?
the
Well,
handshake?
because let's talk about its history. We're a 300-year-old organisation. There's all sorts of things which we base ourselves on, the medieval stonemasons. The handshake was something which was a token of recognition from times when people were illiterate, when they didn't have CVs, when they needed to show their expertise at a level of stonemasonry. We use that in a symbolic sense to mark the difference between somebody who is a first-degree mason, a second-degree mason, or a third-degree mason.
So there are
It's
different
part of the
handshakes for
ceremony.
different
You
degrees?
Yes, there are. And
Okay.
you're absolutely
How do they
forbidden
differ?
from using it outside a lodge.
How do they differ?
Well, they're different. As I say, if I start going into the ins and outs of it, I'm going to be breaking what I promised in my lodge.
Not going to tell you, Dawn. Dawn, he's not going to tell you.
I know
I'm
he
afraid
isn't.
I'm not going to tell you.
All
But
right,
that
Dawn,
doesn't make us...
hold on. We've had you. Dawn, go.
I mean, the handshake is one example of, something secret here. But again, it's used to show other people that you are a Mason. Brian Paddock talked about the fact that he used some of these secret clues, and when he was in the police force, police officers who'd been quite cruel to him beforehand suddenly helped him, get along and get promotions. And this is what people worry about. It's about the secret recognition, that subverts merit when it comes to jobs, that helps corruption. If you don't have anything to hide, publish your names, be open about it, and then people won't treat you with suspicion. They're only suspicious because of how secretive it is.
Okay,
Well,
Doctor, surely it's a
that's
good thing. I mean, if you're a member of a club that could otherwise be oppressed, and you then suddenly know that other people are members of that club, and you help each other, what's wrong with that?
I'd be delighted when the day comes that all of my members are able to proudly say that they're members of the United Grand Lodge of England.
Tell them
But
to.
I'm afraid we're not there yet. And it's a very, very strange argument when you're talking with a Guardian journalist who's saying, we don't need to provide any proof of wrongdoing, we don't need to provide any evidence, we don't need to go through a court, we don't need to do anything. You're all bad and evil unless you do this, this and this. We have a right to associate, which is enshrined in law along with everybody else.
Yeah, but
and
my question-
just...
With respect, Doctor, that wasn't my question. My question is this: if you feel oppressed, we know why Brian Paddock probably felt the way that he did as part of the police service, because he's gay, he's openly gay, and he felt that people were not helping him and they were being very cruel. Suddenly people realised that he was a Mason, and as a result, he was helped by those other Masons in the police service. What's wrong with that? If you're a member of a club and other people are helping you, what's wrong with that? That's what I'm asking you.
Well, what's wrong with that is because we're an organisation based in integrity and morality, and that has no integrity to it and is not moral.
So he shouldn't have been helped just because he was a Mason?
Absolutely not. And the United Grand Lodge of England has a very clear policy on the standards it expects of its members' behaviour. And if they transgress those standards, if they are convicted of anything involving fraud, anything which gives them a criminal record, they are immediately expelled. If they use that handshake outside the lodge for their own personal benefit, they are expelled. And we shouldn't judge 200,000 members on the behaviour of a few people 40 years ago.
Okay, Dawn, so Brian Paddock was wrong to say that. Lord Paddock was wrong to say that.
I don't think so. I think the issue is that this happens all the time. I'd like to know how many people are expelled for this, but also there's a long history of massive corruption involving the Freemasons, the Birmingham Six, the Stalker affair. Somebody was murdered under Blackfriars Bridge as a result of Masonic activity. There's a long history. There's still a lot of corruption going on in local government and the police. Steve White, former police fed chair, said that he felt that progress was being blocked, throughout his career by Masons at a very, very high level. And he said that on the 1st of January this year.
Guys, we're out of time. You started, Doctor, so I have to let Dawn finish. It was great to talk to you.
Okay, brethren. Let me just... Okay. Brethren, before I...
Before I go into what I think is really important about the video, let me just highlight that essentially, if you look at the allegations being thrown at our chief executive officer of the UGLE there, it all boils about the fact that he refuses to address supposedly the fact that they are a secret society. Let me highlight that what is being asked from him would be a violation of our privacy laws. Okay, if you follow the journalist's argument, then all private organizations from the Manila Polo Club to Tamarao Toastmasters must disclose their members or be deemed secret societies. That's ridiculous. Okay, and you can see if you are a member of the fraternity, just how easy it is to address these kinds of fake news. What I really want to highlight, though, is if you look at the demeanor of Dr. Staples and the way he addressed it, you can see that it's often very different from what a lot of our brethren do. They don't, he's not angry. He's just going back to the facts, and he's inviting the public because he knows that the journalist is not gonna change her outlook. Okay, so he's inviting the public to decide for themselves what's really true here, which is the third point I want to make. I will see later in the heat map that we will end up meeting people like these journalists who, whether we like it or not, will not change their stand because they feel clearly that they would be incredibly embarrassed if it would be proven that they are indeed wrong. When you are addressing fake news, as in this case, you are addressing fake news the way Dr. Staples is doing it. You should do it the way he should be doing it. He's not really talking at the journalist. He's addressing the allegations of the other side, and he's inviting the public to judge for yourselves. Go to our museums, talk to us, and see how we can address these sources of fake news. And so with that, before we go to our next topic, we now go to our first poll for the evening, which is why do non-Masonic historians so often inaccurately, erroneously for those the 160 participants, we now are in that portion of the webinar where we ask ourselves, okay, so let's go to actual sources of history. And as we know, our fraternity is wrongly or inaccurately depicted in many historical works. Why do you think this is so? Is it because A, non-Masonic historians lack access to the sources we have? Is it B, hindi sila Mason eh. In English, they're not Freemasons. Or is it C, a combination of ignorance, incompetence, and or prejudice? Or D, all of the above? What do you think? One of you commented, asymmetric information. You're right. Incomplete asymmetric information is for other commented. Were not different information different times. So that's what leads to the concept of asymmetric information. Okay, brethren. I'm purposely for this webinar not adopting my usual tricky self. If you are have reasonably read many of these sources, there's a straightforward answer for this. Kuya Dennis, how are we?
We're 59%.
I'm glad to hear. Apparently, this is a very interesting topic for brethren. While they're doing that, let me highlight, brethren, this has been another source of fake news on the internet. Someone just saw this and say, aha, Trump is a Mason. No, he's not. If you look at that, if you look at the picture closely, brethren, very closely, that's not an apron. That's a letter. That's an envelope, okay? So don't let your eyes fool you. Trump is not a Freemason. Yet, ironically, a picture like this, okay, created waves a few years back. That's a letter from North Korea. It was published, I think, on a newspaper. And before you know it, there were Twitter comments saying, oh, we knew that Trump is a Freemason. No, that's not an apron. That is a large envelope containing a letter. Okay, so just so you know how fake news sometimes ends up going around. Oh, Kuya Dennis? All right, let's see. All right, for the first time, I am very confident to highlight that the majority of you did get it right. Because of a combination of these reasons. Why? Uh, One, a lot of them have lack access to what we have. That's why we have to invite them to use the sources that we have. And some combination of and claims that are simply not true. Something that is not highlighted and which is be in this poll is that our fraternity, Freemasonry, is something you must experience to really get to know what it means to be in the craft. There was in a few years back, I was the chair of our multi-district convention here in the National Capital Region, and we invited a descendant of Mason to speak about his ancestor, and he assumed that just by researching, we were actually asking him to speak about Freemasonry when we weren't. That wasn't the reason why we asked him to. Because of an emergency, he was in the government. He couldn't attend, but he sent his speech, and we were fortunate enough not to read it because you could see that it was a speech based simply on books. And if we had read it to the brethren during the multi-district convention, it would come out as very shallow. Needless to state that that the person we invited, although his ancestor was a Mason, he was not a Mason himself, and that's one reason why he had a very shallow speech, which we opted not to read to the brethren that day because fortunately he was absent. That's one reason why very often, if you are not a Freemason, you can often get this wrong. Okay, so that's congratulations to everyone for getting it right. Let's now continue with what major sources, therefore, influencing error about the craft that we can see in Philippine historical works. Clearly, if you go through of the association, this is what I deal with when we discuss this in history. Just like this pentagram, just like this pentagram of that you see there, supposedly of Washington D.C. I actually did go through a lot of our, did a survey of our historical works and find out that you can actually see three major sources that were when are inaccurately, falsely depicted in history. Okay, so let me go through that and three recommendations to address. Our first force that we often see is incomplete or dubious sourcing. In this book by the great historian, Father Jose Arcilla, he's not the one. I'm talking about an article in his book. Okay, you can see it for yourself. On aspects of the Philippine Revolution, there's an article there supposedly providing a survey in the Philippines. Brethren, this is a classic example of outsider. I don't know, because I only have the article, whether it's incompetence or inadequate literature review, or it wasn't peer reviewed. But clearly the article is plainly erroneous because it is based entirely on a single source, which is the Bulletin of Spain's Gran Oriente de Español, the Grand Orient of Spain, which is the continental Grand Lodge of the Filipino lodges before they moved to the Grand Lodge of the Philippines in the fusion of 1917. I mentioned the fusion of 1917 because if you read the article, you will get this funny passage. Lacuna means absence. There is a lacuna, missing, or a gap of documentary information by mid-1917, which is hard to understand, but for which at no moment were reasons or explanation given. For those of you in the fraternity, we all know that in March of 19, all Filipino Grand Espanol, the Grand Lodge of the this historian clearly has no clue that that happened because it was not reported in the Grand Oriente de Español. Needless to state, the Grand Lodge of the Philippines mushroomed into something bigger after 1917. Yet we have the second paragraph. Okay, the Grand Oriente Español ceased publication of its bulletin in 1936, completely drying all sources of information about Philippine Masonry. Well, brethren, I don't have to tell you. Any member of the craft can tell you that this is ridiculous. Okay, so major force number one, incomplete or dubious sourcing. If you just rely on one source and you're not a Mason, this is a perfect example. Don't take it from me. You can read it from that book of what a historian should not do. Okay, let's go forward. Another major force is blatant misrepresentation. This is from a primer by one religious group, which quotes Albert Pike, who is, as you know, the prime mover of the Scottish Rite. What's problematic about this is that they quote the original from the 1800s, one of his original works, which is Morals and Dogma. Okay? Morals and Dogma in the modern Masonic sense does not mean dogmatic doctrine. It means teachings. Okay? And the thing with Albert Pike is that he wrote in the late 1800s. Okay? But that hasn't stopped the fake news that you're about to read. In that primer, it claims that Freemasonry is a religion, and this is a perfect example of three forms of fake news. One, selective misquotation. Second, exaggerating one's personal misinterpretation. And third, outdated sourcing. The blue passages are perfect examples of selective misquotation. And why do I say that? Look at all the three dots. All of those missing phrases are taken out to make it look like our secular philosophy is indeed a religion if you read it. Okay? And that is meant to support the personal misinterpretation here, which you see in your green, in the green paragraphs. Here's what's funny. My idol among senior grad lecturers, our current Grand Secretary, I've highlighted this many times, Most Worshipful Danny Angles, has highlighted that, it's obvious that we're not a religion because there is no salvation in Freemasonry. For those of you who are participating, okay, this is what Albert Pike is saying also. What Most Worshipful Danny is saying, Albert Pike is also saying. Most Worshipful Albert Pike is also saying. And I know that because it's quoted here. Read the one in big print. Read the green passage in bold print. It inculcates the practice of virtue, but supplies no scheme of redemption for sin. Right there, in this misquotation, you are given Albert Pike saying that Freemasonry is not a religion. Yet, for some reason, that is construed to mean that it is a religion. Okay? And it goes on, number 3, I'm highlighting, the red passage goes on to highlight that, as you can see, Masonry teaches and has preserved the purity, the cardinal tenets of the old primitive faith. Bingo! That's why you're a religion. Here's the thing about this kind of blatant misrepresentation. This is from the 1870s. Okay, there is a modern annotated version issued by the Scottish Rite Southern Jurisdiction in the United States. It's by Hoyos. The latest version is 2013, second edition. And in that annotation, or better yet, the introduction to Morals and Dogma, the current edition of 2010 by Hutchins, A Bridge to Light. This explains, both authors explain easily that this is a classic passage of our concept of tolerance. It's not that we hold faiths similar and therefore practice no faith and therefore that is our religion. No. We believe in our own religion, okay? And while somebody has another religion, we simply, while we hope to convert him to our religion, we're not gonna kill him over it. That's our concept of tolerance. And I invite you, brethren, when you get this handout, read this again. Remember, most worshipful Danny, there is no salvation in Freemasonry. That is what Albert Pike is saying in this very passage, which they quote to mean that Freemasonry is a religion. Quote, Albert Pike, it unculcates the practice of virtue, but supplies no scheme of redemption for sin. I don't know how you could take that to mean that it is a religion when there is no promise of salvation, which is what most worshipful Danny always likes to emphasize. Okay? Third force. Very often, you end up looking at ignorance and fictionalization. Let me talk about this in greater detail because you have to be very nuanced. Sometimes, remember answer B, you end up with a historian who wants to get it right, okay? But who simply, because he's not a Mason or doesn't have the appropriate sources, will end up in error. Because of ignorance, he or she may end up fictionalizing, okay, what he cannot understand. I want to highlight that because the work of Leon Maria Guerrero, the first Filipino, I think is a great work. If you read it, it's actually my second favorite after Rizal, Nationalist and Martyr by Austin Coates. But it is a good work in encapsulating who Rizal was as, and he is correct, the first Filipino. But he did, being an autobiography, Leon Maria Guerrero, who was our ambassador to Great Britain, Mexico, Spain, India, and the first one to Yugoslavia before we closed it. Okay, he was a pillar of our foreign service. Because it's an autobiography, Leon Maria Guerrero had to address this retraction controversy, which we're going to talk about later. And to give credit to the late Leon Maria Guerrero, he did try to assess the evidence before him, despite the fact that from what we know, he is actually a very conservative member of his faith. And he did come to many of the conclusions that you will see later. The primary claimant of the retraction, a certain Father Balaguer, he read the testimony, the supposed testimony, and did not believe it. Okay, he didn't find it credible, according to that Balaguer claims that Rizal was crying, weeping, and begging to repudiate his whatever he thought was supposed to be repudiated. That's in the first Filipino. However, he does end up saying that, on the balance, to him, the evidence is that there was a retraction simply because you can read it in his notes, there are two supposed experts in the University of the Philippines who deemed it as authentic, the supposed retraction document. It was published in 1960. This was before the classic Rizal retraction by Runes and Buenafe. Historians Runes and Buenafe came out demonstrating that it is obviously fake because all the documents have different dates. Okay. In fairness to Ambassador Guerrero, he did not have that study. He had the study of Collas, which actually didn't pick that out. Okay, he wasn't as convinced because he had two other university professors from the University of the Philippines saying it's authentic. I would think that if he had Runes and Buena Fe, he may have ended up changing his mind. We don't know. But here is why I want to highlight that in addition to the fact that he lacks sources, our answer, letter B, also affected his judgment. This is a passage from the First Filipino. It's on page 393. And here he gives his idea of what Freemasonry is. Okay? To him, Masonry is being indifferentism, one religion as good another. Let each man serve the grand architect in his own way. That's relativism. One of the evils we avoid. Okay? That's relativism. And in fairness to Ambassador Guerrero, we cannot expect him to know what is correct about Freemasonry because he's not a Mason. He doesn't know. He cannot distinguish between tolerance and relativism as we define it. Okay, needless to state, there is a distinction between questioning one's faith and challenging the abuses of a social institution. We will get to that later. Hope you found that interesting, brethren. I invite you to read First Filipino. I commend Ambassador Guerrero for the book, but because he was not a Mason, clearly there is error there. Okay, not as big an error as the first one. Okay, but clearly it affected his judgment. In addition to the fact that he did not have the Runes and Buena Fe work, which I think conclusively proves that the documents are. We'll get to that later. That the alleged retraction documents are indeed forgeries. Okay, the group that you see here are my fellow trustees in the Philippine Historical Association. This is a shout out for you participating today. For all of you, I hope this is, especially as you're non-Masons, I hope this is useful to you. What can we do to help? And I highlight this particularly to all Masonic writers who are friends of historians and non-Masonic writers. Okay, we can do three things. We can, like Dr. Staples, encourage them to reach out to us. There's not just our website, but they can contact us. But also reach out and provide a channel for dialogue. In this regard, our next webinar episode is all about Masonic research next month. And we are in the process of launching something complementary to that. So I invite you to stick around and watch what that will be, because it will affect not just Masonic writers, but especially non-Masonic writers and historians. So watch out for our next webinar episode next month. Second, okay, I think what this teaches you is that you should be critical of supposed sources. Let me go back to the First Filipino. Unlike what I previously quoted, how do I know that he relied on those two UP professors? Because it's in his notes. This specific passage that's in red, brethren and guests, there is no source. I don't think he pulled it out of thin air. I think this is just, what he knows based on what he could pick up, and therefore he did not source where this comes from. You should be critical when that happens. Okay? You should also be critical, as like the first example, when somebody uses just one source and says, oh my gosh, all the Freemasons disappeared after 1917 because there are no references to them in my source. Well, obviously, all of us Freemasons know that all of us moved from the Grand Oriente Español to the Grand Lodge of the Philippines in 1917, the exact moment when we disappeared from their bulletin, because all the lodges were no longer members of that lodge. Okay, so be critical of supposed sources. And recommendation 3, if you remember our November 2020 webinar episode, also understand the dangers of confusing regular Freemasonry from Masonic frauds and pseudo-Masonry. There are a lot of Italian priests. I have to tell you this. This is a fact of life. You cannot change their view of what Freemasons are, because there are many criminal gangs in Italy who claim to be Masons but who have nothing to do with Freemasonry. They're fake. They're fake Freemasons. Can you blame them if if priest encounters a local mafia who claims it's Masonic and therefore is scarred for life because he has to deal with them and protect his constituents from them? Can you blame that priest if he thinks that they're all criminals, despite the fact that clearly it's a fake group? I mean, we have to be critical. Okay, we have to be critical. Okay, there's a question. Why did Guerrero claim Rizal to be the first Filipino? He was. Previous to his time, there was no concept of Filipino. He in his writings came up. That concept of one nation came about because of Rizal. Just so you know. Okay, I'm responding to a chat question. Okay, and then of course there's pseudo Masonry. These are groups that borrow some things from us, but who don't claim to be Freemasons. Okay, so we also have to distinguish. There are many groups who will do it just because they borrow some of our rituals. Okay, does not mean that they are Masons. They're not. And to help you out, you can look at the spectrum of Masonic affiliations we provided in our handout of the webinar episode, Masonic Liturgy, Roots of Genealogy of Philippine Masonic Ritual. So these are three ways we can help, in particular, non-Masonic writers and historians to more accurately depict, Freemasonry in our historical work. Okay. Just to our third, but before that, second poll. Trivia question. Why are there presently 5 regular Masonic jurisdictions in Germany? There are actually 5 Grand Lodges. They have an umbrella Grand Lodge, and all that umbrella Grand Lodge does is represent the 5 abroad. But for all intents and purposes, there are 5, not 1. Okay, you might find this funny because there should normally be just 1 per Masonic territory, but there are 5 in Germany. Why is that the case? Okay, is it A, everyone wants his own Grand Lodge? Sounds like Filipinos forming clubs in if you go abroad, you have Filipinos, you have 1 Filipino, that's just him. You have 2 Filipinos, they form a club. You get a third, okay, you have 2 clubs there already. Okay, are they like Filipinos? The more the merrier. Okay, or is it B, infighting, leading to disharmony, leading to expulsion, leading to new Grand Lodges? Or is it C? Oh, this sounds funny. They got a lot fewer, they got more again. Or the historical pattern for development. What is it? Okay, that and brethren and guests are answering. You might wonder who that person is in our handout. That is the infamous Leo Taxil. The infamous Leo is a conspiracy theorist who started out being an anti-Catholic. Okay, we're back. I'm sorry about that. We got cut. Leo Taxil started out as an anti-Catholic conspiracy theorist. And in Filipino, hindi masyadong mabenta yung pinagsasabi niya. He wasn't selling that much. So he turns around and becomes an anti-Catholic, anti-Masonic conspiracy theorist and claims that the world is run by Freemasons. Needless to state, things like the goat and the other great hoaxes come from him. And we know these are all hoaxes because he eventually confessed to all of them, much to the embarrassment of many in the religion that sponsored him. Okay? So, we're now at 50%. What do you think? Very worshipful Deku. Let's wait a few seconds more. Now, this is a real historical question. Okay. So let's see. Let's see. So we've shared the spell results. Let's go with the most popular, D. This is the historical pattern for development of Freemason Germany. Roughly half of you highlighted that. Brethren, wrong. Historically, regular Freemasonry develops under the rule of exclusive territorial jurisdiction. Historically, you have one Grand Lodge asserting itself over a territory. So no, this is not the regular historical pattern. And then the next highest number, roughly 1/4 of you, highlighted B. Okay, infighting leading to disharmony, leading to expulsion, leading to new Grand Lodge. Well, a lot of irregular Grand Lodges, okay, formed that way, like what we had just a decade ago. Okay, but that's not the case here as to the 5. That leaves you with A and C. Okay, is it a la 3 Filipinos in California means 2 clubs? No. Very simplistic, funny way of describing our love for clubs, but Germans are not like that. Okay, so what happened here? Brethren, the reason we have 5 Grand Lodges in Germany is because in World War II, German Masons were the second largest, most persecuted class after people. And that came about because Hitler, it's factually been written about, and National Socialists, the Nazis, were threatened by the Masons. So in Filipino, inubos sila. One of the biggest tragedies of our time. They got a lot fewer by the time that Germany was occupied. There were hardly any Freemasons left. And that included destroying their centers, their temples. And because of that, the occupying forces, they had no lodges to join. So they formed their own lodges. The British formed their own lodges. That's one Grand Lodge. The Americans and Canadians formed their own lodges, and that became another Grand Lodge. The Germans who were expelled, they came back. They formed their own lodge also. Other Germans who stayed in country tried to revive their old Grand Lodge. That became one of the 5. That tragedy is why today we have 5 Grand Lodges in Germany, and I highlight that because that is the name of the dangers we face when not addressing fake news. In order to address fake news, you must not just identify it in terms of where it's coming from, the 4 primary sources, but also, know how to proactively address it. Okay. An example of this guy of Leo Taxiel's hoaxes is his claim that all Masons supposedly worship this being called Baphomet. That's completely out of thin air. There's no such thing. Okay, but if you put it in a cartoon, looks believable, right? Okay, so why would anybody want to do fake news about us? It depends on their motive. It's a heat map. It highlights that essentially, if you go through the fake news, you can basically trace who it comes from based on 2 factors. 1, personal interaction with specific brethren. And 2, the perceived threat that our fraternity is to a specific interest. So let me go with those who don't normally interact with us. and are totally of what they do. They may become of us, okay? But, it's green because they should be educated. Otherwise, they can end up with a lot of wrong perceptions. Gatu, great architect of the universe, neutral term for or neutral reference for divine being becomes goat because they heard it wrong, right? That can happen if you're aware, right? And then, if they get a lot of fake news and they become concerned and they feel that, especially if you believe that journalists that you have this cabal who will steal their jobs from them, of course they're going to get concerned. But it's not just an example of that. It can be, for example, in our families if we don't orient them properly. Our wives can have ideas that, why are we doing this when they can't understand it? That means that you become concerned, and that often is a cause for becoming distant from Freemasons, from us getting misunderstandings. And then, of course, there are those who are more than that because of specific interaction. They filed a petition and they were unjustly rejected, or they entered the craft through if you remember the 4 doors into Freeman that I talked about in August. They entered into the craft and with wrong expectations, thinking that they can curry favor with their superior, and it didn't happen, and that means that they end up leaving the craft. They become alienated from it. You can see that more because of their more interaction in a wrong way, it ends up pissing them off. But the most dangerous are people like Adolf Hitler and the Nazis, who actually have met Freemasons and are threatened by them and therefore go about persecuting them. What are examples of this to make it more clear? Who are aware? Example of those who are aware are, the public who witness how the craft is perceived in popular media, like the book Lost Symbol, right? They read about it, or they watch it in the movies like National Treasure 2. It's great that we're in popular media, but often that's a very limited picture of us. So they are aware, but they need to be further educated, or they might end up with the wrong notion of who we are. And we have non-Masons who experience some aspect of the craft in public. Like, for example, a Masonic funeral, because one of their members, third cousin died. To attend the funeral. So they don't, but they interact with us in a marginal way. And then, of course, family members who are not aware of their clan's Masonic heritage, right, or are minimally aware. The only time in my early teens, when I was had an exposure to the craft, was when my grandfather, Most Worshipful Teodoro Calao Jr., died, and I saw the Masonic funeral. I was truly impressed. But since there was no other, at that time, no other brother in the craft who could guide me, it took nearly a decade and a half for me to end up knocking myself. Right. So those are awareness. You have to be educated. And then concern false information that they end up having because of, for example, fake news, or because they wonder why, for example, your husband, your Masonic widow, in the literal sense, you're wondering, right? Sometimes my own boss, my own wife, asks me, pupunta ka na naman for a Masonic function, right? So I was saved, by the way, by the Brethren of Rizal 22 last December 30, because otherwise I could have gone, maybe I ended up going farther, but they needed someone to represent the Grand Master during their Rizal Day celebration. So thank you to the Brethren of 22. I could tell my wife, no, it's only just the morning, right? So your family members have to be properly oriented, because you're not Masons. You have to understand that they do have to be oriented on why you're listening to me at this time when you could be with them. For example, years, brethren, if they feel clearly, they have to reach out to them and tell them that there's nothing to. That's different from, because of personal interaction, you end up alienating people, petitioners who are unjustly denied, new members who, if not properly initiated, have different ideas about what the craft should be and end up getting wrong notions and wrong expectations, or members who end up leaving the craft because of fraternal disharmony and misunderstandings and a failure to conduct Masonic mediation and harmony practices, as we lectured on or presented on last month. And these people are alienated because of a reason. They had personal interaction with us, and we do have to address concerns. That's different from the debatee that you saw earlier. She's not alienated. She's threatened. It's very clear that she keeps repeating the same lies because she doesn't want, if these are shown to be wrong, she's gonna. Okay, so like Hitler, they feel threatened in some way. And this was the same with the friars. Who were the target of Rizal's challenges against the institution of the church then? Okay? And the greatest threat to regular Freemasonry in certain states, and that is the fact that certain Muslim states either discourage them, like Indonesia, or they are banned. They are Freemasonry is prohibited because of an extremist view that, like certain Christian sects, Freemasonry is some sort of conspiracy or illegal or untoward religion. In this last class, of course, it's very difficult to change minds. What you should be addressing is not the threatened, okay, but those who are recipients of the fake news that they present. Let me highlight that in further detail. How do you address, if you know the 4 types of fake news based on the source, how do you address this based on the sources? Well, it's very important, brethren, first to identify the source, nature, and extent of the falsehood. And for that, we need to actively listen, regardless of which source that comes from. If it's based on ignorance, okay, or those who are merely aware, if it's based on ignorance, then you do need to clarify. Okay, you have to dispel that ignorance in those who are aware, okay, and educate them to distinguish actual Masonic truth from the falsehood. If it's more, in the sense that they are concerned or rejected, then you have to do a step further and engage them. You have to engage them by contextualizing your educational message in terms of what you explore and find out about the interests that are affected here. And they can be probably feasibly understand where you're coming from if you first engage their interests. Needless to state, there are some people you cannot change because those who have been totally rejected and have been it becomes ingrained in them or are threatened. Okay, in that case, your real audience will not be the threatened. It will not be the threatened. It will be to the audiences they give their fake news to. For this, you have to assert what is the correct or what is truthful as against the falsehood asserted. Taken all together, that is a framework for addressing holistically fake news about our fraternity. To remember it, you just remember the acronym ICEA. I see the fake news and I'll address it. Okay, so that in a nutshell is how we can not just identify fake news based on its source, but address the fake news sources. Last poll for the evening. We're now going to three case studies of addressing fake news and inaccuracies. And to highlight that, one of these case studies highlights the infamous Rizal retraction. So, what do you think, brethren? This is Rizal in his Masonic garb. Did Rizal retract his membership in the craft? A. Okay. Can we go to poll 3? Kuya Dennis? Let's go to poll 3. Okay, so A, no. What is there to retract? Okay. Or B, yes, retracted. Zero. I count 7, or is it 9? I think it's 7 or 9. Okay. Or is it C? Yes, because there are several copies of the retraction, 4 to be exact. Or is it D? Because yes, his own church said so, and therefore, if he retracted, then that means he retracted. Okay. Let's see. Again, worry here is I think this may be a giveaway question, but I want to highlight wrong answers so that you'll know, right? We've had 60%, Kuya Dennis, so maybe in 30 seconds. How is it so far? Okay. Here we go. Here are the results. Again, like poll 1, congratulations for the majority of you. 4 out of 5 of you answered correctly. Clearly, the answer is not D, because if church says retract and the church has is basing that retraction on a wrong notion, then there is no such retraction. Wrong notion of what you retracted. No retract. I do have 2 other answers that are wrong. Okay? So A is right, D is clearly wrong. The next, others of you said that there are several copies of the retraction. Yes, we are thankful that there are several copies, because if you read the classic work of Runes and Buenafe on the Rizal retraction, they point out that you proved the forgery that way. The 4 separate copies of the supposed original document and the original document itself all contain different dates, one of which was 1890. Now, I don't have to tell you that Rizal was very much alive several years before, during that date, in 1890, several years before he was executed. Okay? So clearly it's not several copies. What about the numerous witnesses? This might be funny, brethren, but there was only one claimant who said he was dead after his execution from Balaguer. The others, the 6 or 8 others, affidavits, curiously came out, and this is well documented in both Buenafe and the Coates biography of Rizal, curiously came out during the period 1916 to 1918. Now you wonder, why so long? Okay, we'll talk about that later. In the meantime, let's now go to our last topic for this evening. Which is the 3 cases approach of how you can go about high Masonic truth. So far, we talked about the notion of Masonic truth as rational contemplation towards the common good. And we've highlighted how you can do it. The right way to do about it is meet on the level, act by the plumb, and part upon the square, and avoid the 4 opposite evils of the virtues we profess to cherish, right? And then we've come to highlight, okay, 3 major forces creating inaccuracy in our historical works. And we focus on the fact there are 4 major sources for fake news. So using the ICEA framework, identify, okay, identify, educate, identify, clarify, engage, and assert. You can, depending on which source is creating the fake news, capably address that. Okay. So how do you do this in practice? This is our last topic for this evening. I hope that these 3 case studies will highlight that. The first case study is a conceptual approach where let's say, you are discussing the difference between Freemasonry and religion in any setting. Okay, I like this. By the way. I am part of a vast international conspiracy. I will admit, okay, because the purpose of that international conspiracy, remember the plum, is to make the world a better place. I love this poster. Okay, so you're in a family gathering and you want to easily show the difference between a secular philosophy that provides a system of practical ethics like ours and how it relates to religion, and how it's not a religion in itself. Then, if you remember the 4 Masonic schools of thought, okay, let's have a pragmatic approach. How do they view truth in general? Okay, so what is truth to them? We'll talk about that. How do the 4 schools of Masonic thought go about addressing truth in their respective perspectives? Okay, and finally, we'll actually go to actual historical study, the alleged Rizal retraction. Okay, but first, something you can use every day. Okay, how do you distinguish, okay, Masonic philosophy from religion? You do that by highlighting what is on the left hand side of your screen. Real Masonic practice is always about using that system of practical ethics, okay, as based on your God, okay? And the reason why we highlight that is, we want to convince others, but we're not going to kill them to do so. Okay. How do you go about developing a better set of principles and making your intent more discernible? Okay. In addition to your values, you must have principles and intent, right? That's how you do it. The entire system of philosophy that we talk about concerning Freemasonry, there is no instance where it can violate our religion, because unlike our religion, which is dogmatic and provides a total perspective of where we are and where we will eventually be in terms of salvation, that total perspective encapsulates the system of ethics that is Freemasonry. So, if for any reason that system of ethics goes beyond our faith, you get what you have on the right-hand side. Okay, so any supposed Freemason or any Freemason who goes beyond his faith by effectively prioritizing Freemasonry over his faith, that is not regular Freemasonry. That is not what we teach. Okay. How can this happen? Well, if you know this model, then it's very easy for you to address anybody who challenges you and say that, you're doing another religion. Like, for example, you're drinking beer. Me and Kuya, very worshipful Deco, are drinking beer here. And we're your typical Freemason who, you're not a grand lecturer. You haven't been really trained to do this. It's just your typical Masonic gathering. Sa madaling sabihin, in issue terms, nagiinuman kayo, and then you're drinking, and then somebody comes in and says, Your crazy uncle. You have a crazy uncle comes in, doesn't like Freemasons, and says, "You know what? I know that you Freemasons are actually you're actually do your own religion because I've read that you are followers of the heresy of Arianism." Okay. Now, if you're the typical Freemason, okay, and you miss that in religion class, you have no clue. You'll probably have no clue what Arianism is about. It's a heresy, by the way, that does not believe in the in the Trinity that is God, right? So you have no clue what Arianism is, and you're stuck because you can't answer back. Okay? Rather than trying to figure out in Google what Arianism is on your phone, just be comfortable like Dr. Staples and highlight that, my faith, okay, the system of practical ethics that I practice is clearly not following something, whatever you want to call it, Arianism, because it's simply a system of practical ethics that makes my faith deeper. That's it. That's all you have to say. Because, whatever way what he's trying to do is make your, is trying to put you in the right hand side of this model. He's trying to say that, he's trying to claim something, okay, that is in the red circle, that is not a part of the green circle, which is your faith. Highlight that it is impossible for a secular practical system of ethics like Freemasonry to go beyond your faith, because unlike your religion, which is dogmatic, which offers a promise of salvation, which offers a one true system of perspective for seeing your destiny with the divine providence. That's not the job of Freemasonry. Freemasonry is a practical philosophy to make you better based on your faith. That's it. You don't have to look up what Arianism is, because while you can be confused, and I would be confused also normally if I weren't trained to do this, it doesn't matter. There's simply no way for the practical philosophy to go beyond what your faith, which is more encapsulating, teaches you. If it goes beyond, then you are not practicing regular Freemasonry correctly. That's all you have to explain. Okay, let's now go to those of us in the writing community like to argue about, we all have different perspectives of doing Masonic research and writing. And if you remember this is from our episode in Masonic liturgy, I think in November. There are basically 4 schools. To see an elephant, all of us, the elephant. For the authentic school, it's all about getting the facts correctly. Okay, these are part of the rational models. It's all about getting the facts correctly. For the practice, for an example, authentic school, the leading lodge in the United Grand Lodge of England, Quatuor Coronati. It's all about practicing history correctly. Right? Oh, what happened? I think we got cut. Let's just wait for it to come back. Is it back? Okay, I'll just share it again. Sorry about that. We have a connection problem here. I'm sharing it now. Okay, thank you, Kuya Dennis. Okay, so the authentic school is about that. They are up there with professional historians. The practical school is different. Okay, we want to highlight how does the craft best serve our purpose, which is to develop good men better. Okay, so for example, hypothetically, if we were given the course of Masonic history, and somebody were to raise the argument that, there should, based on some other, I don't know, theory, there should actually be several that might interest those of us in the practical school. That kind of discussion is ridiculous because it does not advance the purpose of Freemasonry, which to us is to make it a way to make men better. So we're not in that discussion. Okay. But we're like our brethren who are in the authentic school. Am I back? Okay. So that's the difference between authentic and practical. Okay. The people in the authentic school don't really like the ones on the left hand side, the esoteric and mythical. For those of us who are in the practical school, we see their utility, so we engage with them. Not as much as those in the authentic school. And the main difference between the two schools is one is focused on truly finding out our purpose, which is the esoteric school, universal truth, while one is focused on wisdom. The other is focused on wisdom. What should we champion? Okay, remember before you have intent, remember our system of philosophy. Before you have intent, you must have principles, and before you have principles, you must have values. So the mythical goes into the values most importantly. I highlight that because all of us treat that elephant we call truth in a different way. Historians will most identify with the authentic school. This is the Philippine Revolution by T.M. Calao. What are the facts? Stick to the facts. And that's what we should be highlighting. That's the narrative we should push. For me, in the practical school, and those of us who are disciples of it, we're more interested in how can we make Masonry more practical, more understandable? Like webinars like this. Remember the Harmony Officers Triangular Cornerstone? We had that to make it easier to teach what our system of Masonic mediation and harmony. That's what we want to come up with. So we describe the truth to us is different. It's not different because you cannot have alternative facts. But the facts we want to emphasize are different from the authentic school, right? You can have an argument whether the Philippines should have several Grand Lodges in the authentic school. For us, in the practical school, that's useless because that does not promote the institution and its purpose of making good men better. And therefore, if you actually waste time in a course on that, for those of us in the practical school, you're not serving the craft well. Okay? So that's the rational model side. What about the mystical models? Okay, what is truth? Those in the York Rite, okay, they cherish. Are they me to factually descend from the Templar Knights? Remember that they're not the authentic school. No, they're not. What they're claiming is they see the values of Templar knighthood, Christian Templar knighthood, and they seek to live out those values today, those values of Christian chivalry. That's what they want to emphasize. Do it better than the school because we would not go to that extent because we want to guard against being misunderstood. But there's a value in the mythical school because they really focus on symbolism and values. So it's to say, these York Rite Templars, sinasabi nila Templar Knights sila, hindi naman sila they didn't know, they did. You can't prove that they descended from the Templars, right? That's not what the school is claiming. The mythical school is claiming is we recognize the values that the Templar knighthood promotes, and we want to highlight it. That's why we dress up like them. That's why our ceremonies are like them. And that's different, finally, from the last school, which is esoteric, which is totally opposite from the authentic. Okay, an example of an esoteric study would be to take the Jewish Kabbalah, or what we know as the Tree of Life, and study it as an academic model, as a model for viewing the divine, for understanding God. Does that make you Jewish? No. You are studying it the way you would study it in a school of theology. Okay? It can go really deep, much deeper than the other three schools. Okay? Some of it might be based on interpretation that the authentic school might not be comfortable with because it's not based on facts. But that doesn't make this school, with proponents like very Reverend Vic Hauchin, that doesn't make them any less as important, because their perspective of the truth is focused really on what we cannot see, on what are the ultimate truths about life. And for that, you may have to go beyond what the evidence, which historical evidence, which the authentic school loves. Like, people in the authentic school, like very worshipful Harold Santiago, our new Grand Scribe, or followers of that school would normally like to be involved in. What I want to highlight is, in this pragmatic approach, is that we're all human, we're not God. We are trying to describe the elephant of Freemasonry. And as long as we align with what our perspective, then clearly no one school can claim to be better than the other schools. Okay? Final case for today, Kuya Dennis. I think you're gonna love this. Remember the third poll, and yes, let's go to retraction. It's no longer, really talked about because many textbooks and many courses, especially the result course, teachers just ignore it. But I think it's historical because it teaches us the importance of the authentic school and the importance of strong evidence. I earlier highlighted in the first Filipino that Ambassador Guerrero ended up discerning that the retraction document was not a forgery because of the analysis of it. One copy of the 4 that came out to be supposedly indeed authentic. The first Filipino came out in 1960. In 1962, and every Mason, and hopefully many of the non-Masons should also read this, and every Mason should read this. In 1962, Runes and Buenafer came up with the forgery of the result retraction. And they basically provided the strongest evidence there is that the alleged retraction document is a fake because the 4 copies, they all clearly bear different dates. Okay, you want to read more of that? You can read that book. Also, there are witness affidavits of the 7 or 9, I'm not sure now. It's been a while. 7 or 9, with the exception of Father Balaguer. All of these witness affidavits were produced between 1916 or 1918. The only real claimant who said that there was retraction at the time of the alleged retraction was Father Balaguer. And to give credit to Ambassador Guerrero in the first Filipino, he didn't believe Father Balaguer either. You should read the affidavit. By the way, it claims that Rizal was crying and in the throes of and begging Father Balaguer to retract. Well, Ambassador Guerrero didn't believe that, and neither did Austin Coates. Okay, we all have our favorites. First Filipino is really good, but my personal favorite, and I think if there is one book one biography of Rizal that we should read, my secondary favorites are First Filipino and the Osias translation of Most Worshipful Osias' translation of Most Worshipful Palma's biography, the Great Malayan. But my favorite is by a foreigner, by a Brit. Okay, by a Brit. He was colonial secretary in Hong Kong, and subsequently in my other fraternity, they made him a Knight Grand Cross of Rizal, Austin Coates. In 1967, he came up with possibly the most concise and beautiful biography of Rizal. Rizal, Filipino nationalist and patriot. There is a Filipino version, I think, by Professor Ocampo of UP. You should, if you're uncomfortable in English, kunin nyo yung Filipino na translation. If there's one book on Rizal you should read that. I highlight that because in addition to the strong evidence of forgery and perjury, which is best described in Runes and Buenafe, Austin Coates also believes that there was no retraction, primarily because the claim is behaviorally inconsistent with what happened during that time. In short, like Ambassador Guerrero, Austin Coates says it's too unbelievable that Rizal would be in that situation where he's panicking that it's about. That's not the Rizal that other witnesses on that date know or was doing. Also, Coates also points out that the poem Ultima Dios, which Rizal really highlights that he wrote December 27, 29, before his execution date on December 30, okay, is not mentioned in the claim of Father Balaguer. Coates points that out. Okay, Coates also points out that the way Rizal's corpse was treated, okay, after the death is clearly not the way he would be treated had he been supposedly, with this view of retraction, retracted and returned to the church, supposedly. For example, his burial in Paco Park was disguised. There are other arguments by other historians. One historian highlights that, if he retracted, then he wouldn't have been martyred. But since he didn't retract, he would be martyred. If you ask me personally, that's not a strong argument, because he was martyred primarily because of his political beliefs, not because of his religious beliefs. So I would go with Coates and Runes and Buenafe. The challenge of Runes and Buenafe, and you will see this if you read it, is that they really don't like the partisans on the other side, and that may color the descriptions of the case. I prefer it discussed rationally and weighing all the evidence the way Ambassador Guerrero did it, although he came up with the wrong conclusion, and the way Mr. Coates did it in his work. Okay, but here's the thing: regardless of what Runes and Buenafe said, and regardless of what Austin Coates said, all of us should know, if you follow this model. Okay, example A. Okay, let's wait for it to show up. If you model example A, that it's a conceptual impossibility. It's a conceptual impossibility for Rizal to retract anything. What was Rizal fighting? Was he fighting his faith? Was he claiming that the Virgin Mary was not the mother of Jesus Christ? Was he claiming that the Trinity, is he a proponent of Arianism, or is he claiming that God is not Trinity? that the Trinity does not exist, that there's no Holy Spirit. Was that what Rizal claiming? No. Rizal was focused on challenging the church because at that time, there was a union of church and state, which was the reason why the original papal bull excommunicated Masons. The church at that time believed that there should be a union of church and state and that it should not be separate. And for Rizal, that was possible to that should not be the case because of the abuses of the friars then, which are documented very clearly in Noli Me Tangere and El Filibusterismo. So, was Rizal attacking his faith or attacking the abuses of the then social institution known as the church? Here's my final question as to this, because this is not taken up by Coates, this is not taken up by Runes and Buenafe, this is not really discussed. I have one question when it comes to this. Go through all of his writings, his poems, Ultimo Adios, look at all of his essays, To the Women of Malolos, Our Country, 100 Years from Now, Noli Me Tangere, El Filibusterismo. This is my question. Where in his writings does Rizal actually attack his religious belief? I'm not asking where in his writings does he attack abuses of the church. I am saying where in his writings does Rizal say the Virgin Mary is not the Mother of God? Remember, he's a Catholic. Am I claiming Rizal is a pious Catholic? No. The evidence I see is that actually he may have been a lapsed Catholic. He may have, for instance, not been regular or stopped attending church. He may have been a lapsed Catholic. But where, this is my question, in his writings, does actually attack his religious belief? If you get that he was not attacking his faith, but the abuses of the church, then you get to see that beyond Coates, beyond Runes and Buenafe, you have what I believe is this reason why he did not retract. It's a conceptual impossibility. He never recanted his religious beliefs. He may have been required by his political beliefs to combat abuses of the church. But there is no evidence, at least for me, I may be wrong, there's no evidence from his writings of Rizal ever expressly saying that what he grew up in was wrong. And that is why Rizal could not have possibly retracted. And maybe that's the reason why it's not taken up anymore. Okay? Even with the retraction or no retraction, there's nothing in Rizal's writings that actually contradict Catholic dogma. Well, if you say that, it attacks the friars, yes, but it's attacking the abuses of the human institution, not the faith. Go ahead, please. Ask that question. Where in his writings does Rizal actually attack his religious beliefs as against the then church, the abuses of the then church? I hope you enjoyed. I hope you found that this webinar today better addresses the many misperceptions that we have, and that you come up not just and educated, but entertained by our many caselets. Back to you, Kuya Dennis.
Thank you very much, Kuya Teddy. As always, your seminars and your webinars are not just informative, but entertaining as well, my goodness. It adds up to the value of our Masonic education, definitely. And to each and everyone who are here in this evening's webinar, thank you very much. We always value your time and commitment in joining us every third Wednesday of the month, just so we can have this webinar. Also, those who are watching us through Facebook, Thank you very much. As I've heard, we're about 300 there, Kuya Teddy. My goodness. And then in this webinar, we picked about 180. So we're getting a lot of brethren, going through this process. So thank you to the Cable Tow team, to Very Worshipful Harold, and to his team. Especially to Very Worshipful Anthony Tan, who's been working of Sigani Lodge number 96, who's been helping us disseminate through FB, this live broadcast. Very Worshipful Anthony, thank you very much. You've been very helpful, and your commitment is very much acknowledged. So to everyone, it's a pleasant evening. So before we end, of course, Kuya Teddy will answer your questions. I think tonight, we were able to discern what is real news from fake news, and I like the way Kuya Teddy was able to deliver it, because we don't need the Truth Commission to be here just to ascertain what is happening. So Kuya Teddy, thank you for that. I'm just at this back actually, so if anything happens, you'll just throw a glass of water on me. So this evening indeed is a very exciting one. Okay, Kuya Teddy, there are, I think, 2 questions there. Maybe you can check on them and see if you can.
Yes, actually, I think we answered them already. What are the best ways or means to quickly check fake news? Well, you have the heat map. Remember the heat map, the 4 sources of fake news, and then you have the ICEA framework. So this this will be distributed. The handout, we just have to go through it to check for typo errors, and then we'll distribute it, and we'll put the answers to the questions. Dexter Bersola asks whether it's a binary choice or not. I think that refers to the poll, the third poll choice, where there was only 1 no and 3 yeses. I guess now you know why there were 3 yeses. Okay, that related to the fact that the witness affidavits, the retraction documents. I mean, they've been addressed not by me, but by Runes and Buenafe and by Austin Coates. So with that, Kuya Dennis, can I just highlight? We have 2 more. Wow. We have We have 2 more webinars. That on March 17, we have for those who are into Masonic philosophy and Masonic writers, we have Seeking Masonic Light, pointers for doing personal Masonic research. And for this, I'd like to highlight that we may have a very important announcement during this webinar with regards to doing Masonic research together. If you want to know what that announcement is, please join us March 17. And then our final webinar will be moved 1 week earlier because of ANCOM. On April 14, we want to celebrate not just the craft, but all our appendant bodies. So a shout out to the York Rite, the Scottish Rite, the Order of Demolay, Order of the Secret Monitor, the Turtles, everybody who wants to wants to introduce themselves to the greater public, please approach me so I can include you in our last episode on appendant bodies. That will be on April 14, and we look forward to introducing the greater Masonic family then. With that, Kuya Dennis and Kuya Oliver, baka may mga fake news stories rin kayo na pwede niyong i-chismis. Thank you so much.
Kuya Teddy, kasama ba kami dun sa April, sa Shriners?
Oh, ikaw pa.
Baka ma-fake news kami.
No. I would be very happy to include the Shriners
Okay.
as part in April 14.
Okay, thank you.
For those of you who don't know, the current potentate is are none other than Very Worshipful Deco here.
Okay, Kuya Teddy, just making sure we're part of the whole discussion. Okay, so to each and everyone, Kuya Oliver, do you have any message for the brethren, or are you down with the soju already this evening? Kuya Oliver? Tingin ko na knockout na yan. Okay. To each and everyone who have joined this evening's webinar, we've seen all your messages, we're very glad and we're very happy to see all those discussions. Ang gaganda ng mga pinagsasabi po ninyo at mga even those who are joining in this seminar, Kuya Teddy, we're answering the other queries, or comments in the chat. So that's nice. That's nice. It's very interactive for each and everyone. So to all of you, magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. Maraming salamat. May mga Uy, Kuya Teddy, my goodness, may mga humabol kayo. You know what? You just send it via email, yung mga hinabol yung mga message, mga questions. I think Kuya Teddy will be very glad to answer those and he can see them. Maybe he can include those in the output of this webinar. Kasi ginagawa po ni Kuya Teddy every after webinar, he tries to disseminate it through various media, in the social media platform. So either Viber, Messenger, and he tries to send it out. So that's how good this rockstar SGL is. He find ways, para pong bangko yan. He find ways to make sure that we access what he was able to discuss this evening. So, andito lang ako sa kabilang side niya. Nandito lang ako sa kabilang. Okay, again, brethren, it's been a pleasure serving you and being part of your pandemic life. So, dalawa na lang po. Just wait in time and patience and malapit na tayo matapos and we will transition to the next team. And I think that will be the most exciting part of what we're doing now. So to all of you, magandang gabi po. Thank you for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you again next month in our next webinar series. Again, good night. Have a nice evening.